Students often comment on how it can be very difficult to distinguish between male and female figures in Himalayan art. Well, this is actually very true, and it's really primarily with the deities, not so much with teachers. Teachers are generally male. We have very few female teachers that are represented in art. When they are nuns, then it can be quite difficult, and you really have to identify them through context in a painting, context with the other figures around and the lineage. But as to gender confusions, we really can divide it into maybe three topics. We can say generic iconographic descriptions, then regional aesthetics and norms, and then lastly, terminology and academic disputes. So, with generic iconographic descriptions, we really have only peaceful deities, semi-peaceful, wrathful, and wrathful. And for the sake of this discussion, we don't really have to talk too much about the semi-peaceful, semi-wrathful. We can just talk about the peaceful. The peaceful figures are based on an Indian model of gods, male and female gods in the heavens who are very androgynous. They wear similar looking clothes. They're essentially 16 years of age. And they have very similar faces, and they have very similar body types and waist size. So it's built into the system that male and female deities are similar in appearance. Now, what we have developed over the last, I guess about 350, 400 years, a system of depicting the female face, peaceful face, as more oval, and the male face as having more of a horizontal hairline. So it's a little bit more of a rectangular or square face, and the female is more of an oval face, and this is how you distinguish peaceful deities in the last few hundred years. With the wrathful deities, then no, it's very difficult to distinguish male from female. Sometimes it has to be based on simply context. Other times, with some forms of Sri Devi, then she can be depicted as very skinny, whereas male wrathful deities are often depicted as plump or very heavy or very rotund. But they can have similar facial hair. Their head on the hair on the top of the head is flaming upwards, orange in color. So there's many characteristics that they share, aside from the bulbous eyes and the gaping mouth and the teeth. So it's very difficult to distinguish. Often it has to be context-based. Now, in terms of regional aesthetics and norms, this is really where we get into the gender confusions with Himalayan art, because the regional aesthetics problem is really with China, and we begin to see it with Yongle period sculpture. So Yongle period is early 15th century. We see it from the early 15th century up all the way through the Qianlong period of the 18th century. Because in Chinese aesthetics and Chinese culture, they do not like to have the female breasts bare. And so what they tend to do with Buddhist art and Himalayan art and Indian Buddhist deity art is they remove the breasts. They reduce the breasts to the size of the male torso and chest. Also, in Chinese aesthetics, they did not really adopt the shape of the face as being a distinguishing characteristic between male and female. So that a lot of the Chinese art does not have an oval face for the female and then a horizontal hairline, rectangular face for the male. This creates a problem. it creates a problem because so much art, especially sculpture, was produced during the Qianlong period and the Kangxi period prior to that. So there were several periods. I mean, there were other periods, but Kangxi period produced a lot of art. Qianlong period produced a lot of art, and a lot of it is fairly male-dominated or asexual. They've desexualized the female figures. This is a problem. Now, the third one, terminology and academic dispute, this is not a big subject. This has to do with how we recognize and how we address certain deities. And there's only two that come to mind right now, but I know there are others. One is the Gompo Manning, or the Manning Mahakala. It's a principal Mahakala of the Nyingma tradition. And he is often described as being without sex. So really, with sex, gender follows similarly to Buddhist philosophy. There is, there isn't, there both is and isn't, and there's neither is nor isn't. So basically, there's male, there's female, there's both male and female, and there's neither male nor female. So some people like to call Manning Mahakala androgynous, meaning both male and female, but the terminology in Tibetan and the translation from the Sanskrit implies that it's actually neither male nor female. So that would be Napamsika. Now, another figure which I have only really seen in the 20th century where it's become confused is the deity Vajravidarana. Vajravidarana is very similar to, can be very similar to Vajrasattva, except green in color, and sometimes white, can be white as well, and holding a Vishvavajra, a double Vajra in the right hand, a bell in the left, and this is sometimes referred to as female, and I don't know why. I think it's possible it's just a mistake in reading or spelling with some traditions in the mid to later 20th century. That's where I've seen this problem. Now, there are other confusions that are textual and that are discussed, but they're not so common, and we don't really have to discuss them here. So you can press the like button, you can subscribe, you can also help support the work we do and join HAR on Patreon.